Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Alright YouTube, welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing a review on Daredevil Born Again Episode 1. Well, a review and a recap. So, as always, we're going to do a little bit of background before we actually get into things. So, Daredevil was created by Stan Lee and Bill Everett and first appeared in Marvel Comics Daredevil Issue 1 in April 1964. He has had one live action movie in 2003 of Ben Affleck, and he had a Netflix series which had 3 seasons, which is the predecessor to this show right now. So he is being played by Charlie Cox again, as he did in the Netflix series, and also made his debut technically in the MCU with No Way Home, the Spider-Man movie. So without further ado, let's just get into the recap and review of the first episode of Born Again. So the episode starts off with Daredevil, Karen, and Foggy celebrating Barry's retirement. He's a cop who worked on the force, and he's close friends with the three. So Foggy has to take a phone call, and from the phone call, Matt overhears basically it's a guy that Foggy's defending who's a drug addict who I guess has some sort of issues with criminals and things like that, that Foggy stashed him in his apartment. So Matt overhears that this guy's basically in trouble, and Foggy's trying to downplay it, saying that no, it's okay, everything's fine. But then the guy says he's in trouble, that somebody is actually there. So Matt gets into his Daredevil outfit, which Foggy and Karen know he's Daredevil if you've seen the Netflix shows. But Matt goes into his Daredevil outfit and tries to get to the scene, but he hears what sounds like somebody going back to where Foggy and Karen is and loading a gun, and realizes that it was a trap. And he also realized it was a trap because the guy called back and said, I'm sorry, Foggy, I had to give him your location. So, next thing you know, boom, Bullseye shoots Foggy. And before he could shoot Karen, Daredevil gets back in the scene and they start fighting in the bar. And with the one-shot fight sequences that we all know and love so much from Netflix, this was one of those where Bullseye ends up killing a lot of people in the bar also with this fight. So as Daredevil is chasing Bullseye, he continues to kill a few more people and they get to the rooftop. And as he's fighting, he's still hearing Karen talk to Foggy, trying to put pressure on the wound and saying, please, Foggy, stay with us. But Foggy unfortunately passes away in episode 1. And due to his anger and rage, Daredevil throws Bullseye off of the roof. But Bullseye survives. But even though Bullseye survived, Daredevil's seen it as a sign of him going too far, so he takes off his mask, the Daredevil mask, and throws it off the roof to signify that he basically retires as Daredevil. And all this happens in the first 16 minutes, and then the intro hits, which was crazy. So then, next thing we know is that Vanessa basically took over Kingpin's operations because Kingpin disappeared for a while to recover from being shot and all things like that. So Kingpin comes back and basically comes back into her life and says that he wants to make the city a better place, and that he also came back because of his love for her, and that he has the 25,000 signatures to run for mayor. So after that, we basically find out that Matt is about to be on the stand because after the events of what happened at the bar with Foggy, it takes place a year later. Matt has to go into the stand to actually testify against Bullseye and what he did to everybody. So Bullseye gets um he gets convicted of 11 first-degree murders and is sentenced to life. So Karen and Matt talk. I guess they haven't talked since the events of Foggy's death, and she was mad that Matt kind of went silent on her for a while, and that when Matt tried to get back in contact with her, she did the same to him, so he was upset with her about that. So, next thing you know, Matt basically starts dating this therapist who gets set up by his coworker and person that he starts up his new firm with, the same lady that Foggy tried to hit on earlier in the episode. So Fisk has a mayoral debate where he says that registered vigilantes is a bad idea and that he wants to do something about it. Matt then runs into Fisk on the street and ask if they can talk. And during their talk, it is mentioned that Matt knows Echo shot Kingpin in the face. And Kingpin asks if Matt is keeping tabs on him. Matt says no. They admire how they both have become more successful. Matt tells Kingpin he's retired as Daredevil. Kingpin says he had nothing to do with Foggy's death and that he kept his promise from the end of season 3 of the Daredevil show. And Kingpin asks Matt why did he retire. He says it's because of Foggy's death and because despite the good he was doing, he was causing too much damage and that he crossed the line. So Kingpin hears heard that basically Daredevil tried to throw Bullseye off the roof, and Matt said yeah. So, but Matt also tells Kingpin that if he steps out of line and tries to go back into his ways of crime, that he will stop him, not as Daredevil, but as Matt or whatever like that. And because Kingpin asks who is threatening him, Matt or Daredevil, and Matt just chuckles. So, but then Kingpin tells Matt that if he becomes Daredevil again, he will be arrested as if he becomes mayor, he will outlaw vigilantes. And then, boom, next thing you know, Fisk becomes mayor. Fisk tells Vanessa that he knows she's having an affair, but he won't kill the guy as he's changed. Kingpin gives his inaugural speech where he basically, says that he's going to, change things for New York and stuff like that. And we get like these parallel scenery between Daredevil and Kingpin as Daredevil's walking through the streets, hearing everybody celebrate Kingpin being elected, and Kingpin kind of like in kind of isolation, just kind of watching over the city and things like that. So that is the recap of the episode. To go into the review, so with the main character's death, literally in the beginning of the episode, and Daredevil retiring in the first 15 minutes was crazy. The obviously one shot fight scenes with Bullseye, there was like 3 of them, that was really good. Charlie Cox and the guy who plays Kingpin, I can never say his last name correctly, are always amazing with their performances, and it's good to see them back, and it's good to see them in a version of the show that the fans were going to enjoy and love. So, anyways, with that being said, this episode for me gets a 10 out of 10 because I just think it was a perfect way to start off the show to let everybody know, hey, if you like the Netflix shows, this is the same tone, things like that, but it's still a little bit unique and it shows that Marvel is not dead and that they can do things. So, like I said, it is a 10 out of 10 for this episode. I already have the review for episode 2 written. I just have to record it. And I'm going to continue to catch up on the show and bring you guys some more. So if you want to see more reviews or just any more of my videos in general, make sure you leave a like, a comment, and subscribe and click the notification bell so you do not miss. And always tune into my streams. I stream Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday on my days off from work on Twitch. All that is in the link tree, which is always in the descriptions of my videos. And again, thank you guys for watching. Peace out.